Hey guys, welcome to today's lecture, which is on Jewish terms. Sorry I couldn't be here with you, but I wanted to make sure you had this information because it's going to be on the assessment that you have next week, which will be in the testing center. So next week, don't come to class, go to the TCC Testing Center on the Virginia Beach campus to take assessment one. The topics that will be on assessment one, first week we covered first calls and transfer of remains. The next week we covered the arrangement conference, and so you'll need to know all the aspects of the arrangement conference. When we met again, we talked about cremation, so there's some cremation information on there as well as last week we did Protestant funerals and Catholic funerals. Today I'm going to do Jewish funerals for you, and I expect you to go inside of your ceremonies book and also look at Orthodox funerals, which may come under Greek Orthodox, but at any rate, the Orthodox funerals. And those are the topics that will be on your test. Now, the benefit of this, a lot of people find the Jewish terms among the most challenging topics that we have in Management 1. So at least you've got this lecture that will be on Blackboard for a good amount of time. If you want to go back and take a look at it, you can do so. Likewise, at some point in time between now and Thursday, I'm going to go in Blackboard and I am going to post a list of vocabulary terms that you should be familiar with for test one. So the terms will come from those topics that I just mentioned, and it'll be there, and I'm going to highlight those so that you'll know which ones that you need to know. And I likely will refresh this document periodically between now and the rest of the semester as we add more topics to the list. So let's talk about Jewish funerals. And unfortunately, this year, normally I have Mike Leonard, and I told you about Mike. He is from the H.D. Oliver Funeral Apartments, and he normally comes in and does the lecture on Jewish funerals for us. But for whatever reason, we just couldn't align our schedules. I can get him in later. He may come in and give you some more subtleties to it that might help you as well. Now, Jewish funerals. Under the Jewish faith, there are three segments, if you will. Okay, one, which is the most lenient of the three, which is called Reform. The second, which is kind of middle of the road, is called Conservative. And the most strict is Orthodox. Now, you remember when we covered many of the religions, we talked about restrictions on removal, restrictions on embalming. In the Jewish faith, it's something that's highly recognized as the Sabbath day is what's called the Shabbat. And it begins at sundown Friday and extends until sundown Saturday. Now, there used to be a time during that period where individuals who were of Jewish faith were not allowed to do anything. You don't work, you don't go to school. Even if there was a death, you were to leave the remains where it was until such time when the Shabbat was over and the funeral home could come and take custody of the remains. Now, obviously now, that's not practical. You've got protection of public health, you have public institutions, you have people who perish at home, and different things of that nature where it's just not practical to leave a person in their home for 24 hours before we remove the body. So in this particular instance, with all of the Jewish faiths, they recognize the Shabbat, but when it comes to transfer of remains, it kind of transcends that. So let's start with Orthodox first, and we'll kind of go from most least conservative or most conservative to least conservative. In the Orthodox faith, or Orthodox Jewish, there is absolutely no embalming. Okay. As a matter of fact, the family is going to be very offended even if you ask them about embalming. So these are things you're supposed to know. You may ask a family, and they may tell you that they're Orthodox, and at that point, you know that there is going to be no embalming of the remains whatsoever. Okay. Second thing that's very important is that in the Orthodox faith, there is a committee within the temple composed of generally nurses and physicians and individuals who are not unfamiliar with handling human bodies, if you will, either living or dead. And that committee is called the Hevra Kaddish. That's one of your vocabulary words. The Hevra Kaddish is a committee, and what they do is they come to the funeral home and they're going to perform a ritualistic washing of the body called and my Jewish terms have gone away from me. The washing of the body is called, well, I don't know, it'll be in your vocabulary words and you'll see it. And I'll probably think about it before this lecture is over anyway. But they come out and they wash the body, and they're going to shroud the body, and then they're going to place it in a casket that's used in the Orthodox faith called an aron. Now, an aron has some very unique characteristics. An aron is made of wood completely. There is no metal parts. It's not composed with any animal glue. Okay? It's never constructed during the Jewish Sabbath day. And they have what's called a rabbinical blessing, which means that they're blessed by a rabbi, which makes them kosher. Okay? Now, something else about the Jewish faith. In one of the in one of the classes that we teach here, we talk about metal caskets and protection. And with a lot of individuals, having a protective casket is something that's desirable. We want to provide our loved ones earthly remains with as much protection as possible. So selling protective caskets and outer burial containers that will protect the body in the grave is something that is very important to a lot of Protestant individuals. However, in the Jewish faith, what is most important is that the body go back to its elements as quickly as possible. And so in the Jewish faith, we want a wooden casket because wood tends to deteriorate very quickly. Well, not very quickly, but it tends to deteriorate faster than other materials that a casket could be made of. Okay? We don't want any embalming because that's going to preserve the body. Okay? So in the Jewish faith, having a system whereby the committee will come in and dress this person and place them in a casket, and that casket is made completely of wood without any preservative features whatsoever, that helps out tremendously and makes these caskets very desirable in the Jewish faith. Now, just remember that term for the ritualistic washing of the body. It's called the tahara, the T-A-H-A-R-A, and that'll be one of your vocabulary words that you're going to want to look up a little later. Now, an important sidebar for you. As a practitioner, when you have the committee that's going to come into your preparation room and perform this ritualistic washing, something that you want to make sure that you do before they come is you want to make sure that you remove all of the items that are indicative of embalming. So if you have other remains that are in the room that are embalmed, you want to move them out. Obviously, you'll have an embalming machine and instruments. Why don't we just take a nice clean sheet and cover those things? Anything that would be more secular, more Protestant, if you will, we don't want to have in the face of the committee when they come in because they could be offended by it. So we've got no embalming, we've got use of an aron, okay? And something else that happens during this period, or during this the death and mourning period in the Jewish faith, is something called Shiva. You may have heard the term where someone says they're sitting Shiva. In the Jewish faith, to sit Shiva means that you're grieving. It's the highest form of grieving. It's where the family will sit on wooden stools at home. It's where men will not shave. They typically will not bathe. And when you sit Shiva, you are showing that you are completely miserable and grieving for your loved one. In this particular time, you're not allowed to go out and do anything that would be considered entertainment. Everything is centered around the loss of your loved one and observing their loss and the grief that's associated with that. Okay. Another term that you want to know is called the shomer. The shomer in the Jewish faith is also known as the watcher. And the term watcher means one who would watch over the body between death and disposition, or death and the graveside, or the gravesite, if you will. So the shomer would come to the funeral home and actually stay with the body in close proximity to the body to watch it and to make sure it's not harmed and to make sure all the elements of Orthodox faith are carried out throughout that process. Now, in the Jewish faith, the number 7 is completion. We have the 7-day mourning period that we talked about, which is called Shiva. Typically, when we are in a procession from the to the graveside, it's not uncommon for the rabbi, who's the religious leader in the Jewish faith and who will be the officiant of your service, to stop 7 times and pray before they reach the graveside. Something else is very important. When you are talking to the rabbi, he likes to be referred to as just that, the rabbi. So you want to make sure that you use the proper terms when you're dealing with the hierarchy in the religious faith in that particular instance. Also, let's move down. We've covered Orthodox, and we likely will come back and hit some subtleties of that as well. Let's move to conservative. Conservative is just slightly less stringent than Orthodox, okay? Slightly less. There are some small subtleties that occur here that they make a small amount of difference. For example, with the casket. In the Orthodox faith, they're always going to prefer the Aaron, the very Orthodox casket. In the conservative faith, there may be some latitude there, just a little bit, okay? Still not going to participate in embalming, but there's going to be a small amount of latitude with conservative. Now, with Reform, let me write this so you can read it. It's not reformed, it's reform. The Reformed Jewish person will prefer a lot of elements of Orthodox and a lot of elements of conservative. Meaning that a lot of times they may or may not embalm. They may or may not choose to have the body ritualistically shrouded and buried. They may or may not want the body in an urn or embalmed. And so with Reform, there's some latitude there, and you as the practitioner need to be very vigilant in making sure you know exactly what elements of conservative Judaism the family wants observed. All right, a couple more terms I wanted to introduce you to. The first one is called Kriah, Kriah. And what Kriah is it's a symbol of grief. And in the Jewish faith, the loss of a loved one is viewed as final. It's very harsh. And so as an expression of that grief, there once was a time in ancient Judaism, if you will, where it wasn't uncommon for mourners to tear and rip at their garments. Well, as a more modern day symbol of that, we have Kriah. And what Kriah is, it's the tearing of the upper corner of a garment. So what Mike Leonard always says when he's here is that you want to make sure that you inform your families about Kriah, because what'll happen is they could have on one of their best dresses or their best suit, and the rabbi is going to want to take a knife and cut a corner of the garment of that particular outfit or suit or dress or what have you as a sign of grief when they're recognizing Kriah. What a lot of funeral homes will do is they will provide Kriah buttons or ribbons, which is a ribbon that is one solid piece that's designed for the rabbi to cut that ribbon as opposed to that person's garment. So you want to know what Kriah is. We also talked about the ritualistic washing of the body. And when that is performed, the Hebrew Kaddish is going to dress the body in a garment known as a takrishim. That is spelled, and I'm looking that up so I spell it right, Tachricim. Takrishim is a white linen garment. It's one solid piece, and it's wrapped, or the deceased body is wrapped in that prior to being placed inside of the Aaron. Now, I think that's everything that I'm going to give you. When I meet you today at 4, I'm going to give you some more subtleties about this, and then I'm going to let you go and watch this video and prepare for your exam. So, that being said, I will see you at 4 o'clock today, and today is Monday the 19th, and your test is going to be Monday the 26th in the testing center. Thanks for your time.